Caffeine. You don't feel awake because your body has more energy. You feel awake because your brain stops hearing the go-to-bed signal. As you stay awake, your brain releases adenosine. It's a pressure signal and builds over time. The more it stacks up, the heavier thinking feels. Focus slips. Motivation fades. This is your brain tracking how long you've been awake. Caffeine doesn't add energy. It blocks that pressure from being noticed. It fits into the same receptors adenosine normally uses, like a fake key in the lock. When those receptors are occupied, your brain can't read the tired signal. The pressure is still there. You just stop feeling it. Because your brain thinks fatigue is gone, it releases dopamine and norepinephrine. Alertness rises, reaction speed improves, drive kicks in. That's the lift, the sudden clarity. The moment work goes from impossible to manageable. But the adenosine never stopped building. While caffeine masks the signal, adenosine keeps piling up. Over time, your brain adds more adenosine receptors, so the same dose hits weaker. That's tolerance. 1 cup quietly turns into 3. Caffeine also raises cortisol. In small amounts, it sharpens attention. Too much brings jitters, racing thoughts, and low-grade anxiety. That's why the same coffee can feel great one day and awful the next. When caffeine wears off, all that stored adenosine binds at once. Alertness drops. Brain fog rolls in. Irritability spikes. The crash isn't a flaw. It's delayed tiredness arriving together. Caffeine doesn't erase fatigue. It just reschedules it. Energy drinks. The boost doesn't come from energy. It comes from stacking stimulants faster than your brain can adapt. Most energy drinks combine caffeine, sugar, and fast-acting additives like taurine and guarana. Each pushes alertness differently. Together, they hit in a tight window. The caffeine works the same way as before. It blocks adenosine, muting the tired signal. But the doses are higher, absorbed faster, and paired with liquid sugar. That speed amplifies the effect. Sugar spikes blood glucose. The brain runs on glucose, so attention jumps, mood lifts, thoughts feel brighter. Then insulin clears it, levels drop. That's the slump, and it can arrive quickly. Taurine doesn't add energy. It alters how neurons fire and how calcium moves through cells. This smooths the jitter, making the drink feel gentler than it is. The stimulation stays. The warning signs soften. Guarana is extra caffeine under a different name. Your brain doesn't care what the label says. It all stacks on the same system. The result is a sharp rise in dopamine and norepinephrine. Focus tightens, speech speeds up. Confidence creeps ahead of accuracy. It feels productive, but it's mostly stimulation, not capacity. Then the system overshoots. Heart rate stays high. Cortisol remains elevated. Blood sugar drops. Adenosine keeps building. When the wave breaks, fatigue hits harder. Fog, irritability, the urge for another can. Energy drinks don't sustain performance. They compress stimulation into a short burst and stretch out the crash that follows. Nicotine. The calm is the trick. The focus is the hook. Nicotine doesn't act like most stimulants. It doesn't just push you up. It stabilizes you first, then sharpens what's left. Nicotine binds to acetylcholine receptors. Acetylcholine is tied to attention, learning, and signal clarity. When those receptors activate, neural communication tightens, background noise drops, thoughts line up. That's why nicotine can feel oddly calming instead of jittery. But the calm isn't real. Nicotine also triggers dopamine release in the reward system. Not a flood, a fast, precise spike, just enough to make the behavior feel correct. Focus improves, mood lifts slightly. The brain tags the moment as useful. At the same time, nicotine raises norepinephrine. Heart rate increases, blood pressure rises, reaction time sharpens. The body enters a low-level alert state while the mind feels controlled. That contrast is what makes nicotine feel clean. Acetylcholine receptors become less sensitive and more numerous. The brain adapts quickly. Between doses, those receptors sit understimulated. Attention drops, irritation creeps in, the calm disappears. This isn't withdrawal yet, it's signal imbalance. That's why nicotine feels best right after use and oddly uncomfortable soon after. Focus fades, restlessness grows. The urge to redose doesn't feel like craving, it feels like correction. Nicotine also trains attention to narrow. You lock onto one task well, but flexibility drops. Switching tasks feels harder. Big picture thinking shrinks. The mind becomes efficient, not expansive. Over time, baseline dopamine falls. The brain expects the spike. Without it, motivation feels flat, not low, just dull. Nicotine doesn't improve focus long term. It teaches your brain to require stimulation to feel normal. Sugar. The effect shows up before you even finish chewing. That's not hunger disappearing. That's chemistry kicking in. Sugar doesn't stimulate the brain directly, it fuels it. And fuel changes behavior fast. When sugar enters the bloodstream, blood glucose rises quickly. Glucose is the brain's primary energy source, so neurons fire more easily. Thinking feels lighter. Mood lifts. Small tasks feel easier to start. This is real energy, not illusion. But speed changes everything. Fast sugar hits the bloodstream all at once. The pancreas responds with insulin to move glucose into cells. When the rise is steep, the correction is steep too. Blood sugar can fall just as fast as it climbed. The brain notices the drop immediately. Focus fades, patience thins. Everything feels harder than it should. This isn't a mood problem, it's a fuel problem. Sugar also nudges dopamine. Not like a drug, but enough to tag the experience as rewarding. Sweet taste predicts quick energy. The brain learns the shortcut. That's why cravings feel specific and urgent. Repeated spikes train the system. Over time, insulin responses become less efficient. Cells stop responding as cleanly. Glucose lingers, then drops harder. Energy swings widen, highs shorten, lows deepen. Sugar also changes how attention behaves. You get quick mental speed but poor endurance. Starting tasks feels easier than finishing them. Focus burns hot, then runs out. After the crash, stress hormones like cortisol kick in to stabilize blood sugar. Irritability creeps in. You're tired but wired. That state pushes you toward more sugar, not rest. Sugar doesn't support sustained energy. It front-loads fuel and backloads fatigue. Prescription drugs. The task doesn't get easier. Everything else just stops competing. These drugs don't stimulate broadly, they target attention systems with precision. Most increase dopamine and norepinephrine activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region handling focus, impulse control, and task selection. Signal strength improves. Distractions lose priority. One task moves to the front and stays there. This isn't extra energy, it's forced prioritization. Thoughts feel organized, time compresses. You sit with one problem longer without drifting. For attention disorders, this corrects a deficit. For others, it pushes past baseline. With repeated use, natural dopamine sensitivity drops. The system starts expecting assistance. Without it, focus feels dull. Motivation thins, not broken, just underpowered. Attention narrows too. You lock in, but flexibility drops. Switching tasks gets harder. Creative range shrinks. Efficient, just not expansive. Physiologically, heart rate climbs, blood pressure rises, stress hormones creep up, appetite fades, sleep quality slips. None of it feels dramatic, it accumulates quietly. Confidence shifts and decisions speed up faster than accuracy. You feel decisive before precise. That gap matters. When it wears off, neurotransmitter levels fall. Focus collapses. Mental fatigue hits hard. Baseline feels worse by contrast. Prescription-focused drugs don't build discipline. They temporarily replace it with chemistry. Nootropics. Nootropics don't hit like classic stimulants. Most work by gently shifting neurotransmitters, blood flow, or cellular metabolism. The changes are small by design. Some raise acetylcholine, tied to learning and memory. Others support mitochondrial function, helping neurons produce energy more efficiently. A few lightly boost dopamine, sharpening motivation without obvious stimulation. The effect feels clean. Thoughts smooth out. Words come easier. Mental friction drops. You don't feel wired. You feel slightly more capable than usual. But the gains stay narrow. Nootropics improve one slice of cognition at a time. Focus improves, but flexibility doesn't. It's clarity in one lane, not the whole system. Expectation fills in the gaps. Mild effects leave room for belief to amplify them. When you expect sharper thinking, you notice confirming moments. Placebo isn't imaginary. It's the brain magnifying small signals. Over time, those systems recalibrate. Supported pathways stop responding the same way. What once felt noticeable fades into the background. Stacking adds another layer. Many compounds overlap on the same circuits. Combined, they quietly push harder. The load builds without loud warnings. When you stop, nothing crashes, but something feels muted. Mental sharpness dulls, motivation dips, baseline flattens more than before. Nootropics don't unlock hidden intelligence. They fine-tune performance within tight limits. Notifications. You're in the middle of something when your phone lights up. You don't even read it, and you still lose the moment. Notifications don't add information. They interrupt attention right as your brain is trying to settle into focus. Each alert creates a tiny prediction check. Your brain pauses the task to ask, is this more important? That pause costs energy. Even if you ignore the phone, the system already shifted. When you do check, dopamine spikes briefly. Not because the message matters, but because something new arrived. Novelty alone is enough. The brain tags it as relevant before thinking it through. That's the hook. Over time, notifications train attention to stay shallow. Your brain expects interruption. Focus stops fully loading. Tasks feel harder to enter and easier to abandon. You're not constantly distracted, you're pre-interrupted. Every alert also resets context. When you go back to the task, your brain has to reload where you were and what came next. That reload burns glucose and time. The cost is invisible, but it compounds. Frequent notifications raise baseline stress. Cortisol creeps up. Vigilance stays slightly elevated. You feel busy without moving forward, alert without progress. Silence feels uncomfortable at first. That isn't boredom. It's your nervous system adjusting to fewer hits. Notifications don't steal focus by force. They teach your brain to give it away automatically. Sleep deprivation. Sleep loss doesn't shut the brain down right away. It changes how it prioritizes. When you miss sleep, adenosine builds faster and clears slower. At the same time, stress hormones rise to keep you functional. Cortisol and adrenaline step in to compensate. You feel alert, focused, even productive for a while. That early boost is misleading. The prefrontal cortex, which handles judgment, planning, and impulse control, loses efficiency first. Meanwhile, emotional and reactive systems stay online. You feel confident before you're accurate, decisive before you're thoughtful. Attention narrows. You can grind through simple tasks, but complex thinking degrades. Memory formation weakens. New information doesn't stick. Mistakes slip past unnoticed. Sleep deprivation also changes reward processing. Dopamine signaling becomes erratic. Short-term wins feel more important. Long-term consequences fade. That's why late nights push risky decisions and bad habits. As deprivation continues, glucose metabolism in the brain drops. Neurons fire less efficiently. Reaction time slows. Emotional regulation frays as irritability rises without a clear cause. You may feel wired, but your nervous system is running on emergency backup. The most dangerous part is perception. You don't feel how impaired you are. Subjective confidence stays high while objective performance falls. Sleep deprivation doesn't stimulate you directly. It strips away safeguards and lets momentum do the rest. Most people have no idea what's actually happening in their brain when they reach for a boost. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Like the video and subscribe if this changed how you see that next cup or can.